Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really trying to crack the code of success,
Hmm.
specifically by digging into some, let's say, raw wisdom from a really prominent billionaire entrepreneur.
Yeah, the source material we're using is an interview, right? Where he was just brutally honest.
Exactly. No holding back on what it truly takes. So, our mission here is to pull out the practical, no nonsense stuff for your own business, your own growth. Ready?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
And it's compelling because, it just strips away so much of the usual fluff you hear about success.
Right.
This guy is direct, sometimes, yeah, maybe blunt,
Yeah.
but the perspective, it gives you a surprisingly clear blueprint.
I totally agree. And he starts with this foundational principle, success, he argues. It just hinges on outworking everybody, being smarter, being a
Mm.
better salesperson,
Wow.
and just being better prepared.
Yeah.
So for you listening, maybe think for a second, what would that kind of absolute commitment look like in your field?
It's this intense mindset he talks about. He actually says, work like someone is spending 24 hours, working 24 hours to take it all away from you.
Wow.
And the key thing here isn't just putting in more hours, you
Yeah.
know. It's the whole mindset, shifting how you see competition. It's not just a threat.
Oh,
It's like
right.
it becomes this engine driving you to constantly get better because you know someone else is trying. It keeps you from getting complacent. That's his whole take on competitive environments.
Okay, so if that's the path to success, he's just as direct about why people fail. His answer, pretty sharp. Lack of brains, lack of effort.
And he really digs into that brains part. It's not about being, a genius necessarily.
Right.
It means doing the work, the hard yards, really understanding your industry, your customers better than anyone else. He puts it so bluntly. If you walk into a competitive environment and they still know more about the business than you do, more about your customers, you're going to lose.
Oof.
Yeah. And he even warns, like, if you're competing with me, you better know what you're doing. Otherwise, I'm going to kick your butt. Huh.
So for him, it's that mix. Not knowing enough and not putting in the work. That's what kills businesses early on, he thinks.
That's definitely a stark way to put it. But isn't there maybe a risk there of just dismissing real external factors?
Yeah.
Systemic stuff that might hold someone back beyond just their lack of brains or effort.
That's a totally fair question. And his view, yeah, it really centers on the individual's control, their agency, their preparation. He's definitely speaking from a place of intense personal accountability. Look, external factors that absolutely exist, no doubt. But his point seems to be that you do control your own curiosity, your own work ethic.
Right.
And he believes those two things, those internal levers, they're powerful enough to overcome a lot of obstacles, or at least give you the best shot. It kind of flips the script from blaming outside forces to empowering yourself from within.
Okay, empowering yourself through preparation.
Hmm.
And speaking of prep, he makes this really bold claim. Says he can tell if someone's going to make it as an entrepreneur in just, 5 or 10 minutes?
Yeah. Based on passion, focus, and crucially, preparation.
Right. And he explains it a bit. He's basically assessing, how many of the 1,000 things that influence whether or not you're going to be successful someone has actually thought about and, addressed already.
1,000 things.
But here's where it gets really interesting for me. He says the questions you ask, they tell him more about you than pretty much anything else.
Huh.
He thinks asking really basic questions, stuff you should have known already, that disqualifies you almost more than anything.
Wow. Okay, that immediately makes me think of that old saying, right? The only stupid questions are the ones you don't ask. He's basically saying, nope, some questions are stupid.
Well, maybe not stupid, but indicative.
Indicative of a lack of preparation.
Exactly.
Hmm.
For him, it's not about shutting down curiosity. It's about the level of the question. If you're asking something you could found with a 10-second search or just basic industry reading,
Yeah.
it signals you haven't done that essential groundwork before taking up someone's time. It's about showing respect, really. Respect for their time and respect for your own goals by coming prepared.
This focus on learning, on knowing your stuff, it ties into another point he makes. If I'm not continuously learning, someone else is going to kick my butt, which connects to what he calls paranoia.
Yeah, and it's a specific kind of paranoia. He says the greatest source of your paranoia should be knowledge. What he means is he's constantly asking himself, what would I do to kick my own butt?
Ah, okay. Turning it inward.
Exactly. So he's always thinking about what competitors might do.
Yeah.
Never underestimating them.
Yeah.
He told this story about being at a college business plan competition. And the students were just totally dismissive of the competition. His insight is, if you're actually good You make other people work harder to catch you.
Right, you raise the bar.
You raise the bar. So that paranoia, it's not about being scared or anxious all the time. It's a tool. It's self-awareness, pushing you to keep innovating, stay ahead, turning that pressure into fuel for improvement.
So, okay, what does this all mean for you listening? How can this kind of healthy paranoia, this hyper-awareness, be applied outside of, cutthroat business?
I think it's about building that strong internal feedback loop, always looking at your own weaknesses, your blind spots, and then actively turning that awareness into learning, into getting better. Doesn't matter if you're an artist honing your craft or a scientist keeping up with research or a manager improving your team. That mindset, it fights complacency. It drives growth.
Okay, now here's something he said that might raise a few eyebrows,
Oh.
especially now with all the talk about dropping out of college. He says people who tell you to forget about school, drop out, are idiots.
Yeah, that's definitely provocative. But he has a very practical reason.
Which,
It's about understanding the fundamental language of business. Accounting, finance, marketing, sales. He argues pretty strongly that without understanding basic accounting, for instance, you're just behind the eight ball.
even if you hire an accountant.
Even then, because you need to understand what they're telling you. He stresses the difference between, say, profitability, income minus expenses on paper, and actual cash flow, the money moving in and out.
Huge difference. You can be profitable and go broke.
Exactly, or the other way around sometimes. So while, sure, maybe some people are so self-motivated they can learn it all themselves, he thinks most people really benefit from the structure, the obligation of a formal course. Even a cheap community college one.
$99 you mentioned.
Yeah. And knowing that stuff can lower your startup costs too, right? Maybe you don't need to pay a lawyer immediately for basic incorporation if you understand the process.
And interestingly, he said the most important thing he learned from college wasn't just like finance or marketing. It was broader. He said, I learned how to learn.
Yes. Crucial point.
Because, as he says, the one certainty in business is that it's always going to be changing.
Absolutely. That adaptability, that skill of constantly picking up and using new knowledge, that becomes way more valuable long-term than any specific subject you learned years ago, especially today.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit to growth. How fast should you grow? He says it depends a lot on your skill set, where the company is in its life cycle. And he also brings up that idea that perfection is the enemy of profitability, which doesn't mean put out junk.
Right? Not a bad product.
But it means prioritizing getting those first customers, the low-hanging fruit, the ones willing to commit early.
And he lays out this really clear cycle. Get that first customer, learn from them, iterate, make things better.
Then the next one's easier.
Faster, yeah. And then you start asking for referrals. And he tells this amazing story about when he first bought the Dallas Mavericks.
Oh, yeah.
He literally got a White Pages phone book, remember those,
Vaguely.
and started cold calling former season ticket holders himself.
The billionaire owner making cold calls.
Yep. His reasoning was powerful. If I'm not going to do it, how can I expect someone else to do it?
Wow. That's leading from the front.
Totally. And he gives another example, like if he saw a trash on the floor at the arena, he'd pick it up himself rather than telling someone else to. It's about embodying the work ethic you expect, setting the standard.
That's a pretty incredible image. A billionaire picking up trash, working the phones. It really drills home that outwork everyone idea.
It really does. It's practical, hands-on leadership, Doesn't matter how much money you have.
So finally, let's touch on that classic question. Are entrepreneurs born or built? He actually says he felt wired to be excited about business.
Right. He does lean towards that born with it side a bit.
Yeah.
But he connects it to understanding your own unique skills. What are you naturally good at? And then finding the absolute best place to use those skills.
Like finding the right sport for your body type?
Exactly. He uses a sports analogy. Dirk Nowitzki. Sure, he had natural gifts, height, whatever. But it was his incredible discipline and his focus to do what's necessary to be successful that made him great. It's the combination.
Okay.
And then this entrepreneur tells this great story about his first business, age 12, buying and selling baseball cards and stamps.
A classic kid hustle.
Totally. But he even created these special packages, like guaranteed to have a Pittsburgh Pirate in this package, his local team, and sold them for 3 times the price on a park bench.
Already arbitraging at 12.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And he said, quite seriously, he learned as much about business when I was 9, 10, and 12 as I learned any other time. That early hustle taught him fundamentals.
So this whole deep dive, it really shows that his path, anyway, it seems like this potent mix. Yes, maybe some innate drive, but also this absolutely relentless focus on building knowledge, putting in the effort, thinking strategically. It's
Yeah.
not just what you start with, it's what you do with it, what you build relentlessly.
It's definitely a call to action, isn't it? To really engage with your own journey. Know your skills, be disciplined about improving, and just stay humble enough to keep learning, always learning.
And there you have it. A pretty clear, no-nonsense blueprint for success, pulled straight from the, well, sometimes brutally honest words of this entrepreneur. We covered the need to outwork and outlearn everyone, the huge importance of preparation, asking the right questions, that surprising power of healthy paranoia.
Right, the language of business, too.
Yes, that foundational language, and just the impact of getting your hands dirty no matter who you are.
It really all comes back to owning your own growth, doesn't it? Understanding that success isn't passive. It's an active, ongoing thing you do.
Well said.
So maybe as you go about your week, think about that healthy paranoia, that awareness. Is it awareness of the competition? Or just the need to keep learning? Which part of that will you choose to act on? Turn it into your next opportunity for growth.